One small act of kindness in a busy diner set off a chain of events that transformed a young waitress's life and the lives of countless children she would inspire. The diner was alive with the usual morning hustle. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the scent of sizzling bacon and toasted bread. Plates clattered on the counters, chairs scraped lightly against the floor. The chatter of customers created a familiar hum. Among all this, Emma moved with a natural rhythm. She wasn't just serving food. She was making sure everyone felt seen, heard, and cared for. She carried trays filled with eggs, toast, and coffee cups, balancing them expertly in one hand while greeting customers with a warm smile that seemed to lighten the room. There was something about the way she worked, a kind of grace in the ordinary tasks that made her presence noticeable without her even trying. At a corner table sat a young boy named Max, his legs swinging slightly under the chair. Max had cerebral palsy, and everyday movements, which many took for granted, were a challenge for him. He tried to sit up straight, to follow the beat of a song playing softly from the jukebox in the corner, but his movements were stiff, uneven, and sometimes awkward. Most people might not have noticed him at all, or if they did, they might have felt a brief pang of pity and then looked away. But Emma saw him. She noticed the tiny effort it took for him to tap his foot in rhythm, the way his fingers twitched in concentration, and the flicker of frustration in his eyes when he struggled. Emma didn't hesitate. She approached Max's table quietly, leaning down to his level so that she wasn't towering over him. Her voice was soft but clear, filled with encouragement. "Hey Max, do you want to try leading the dance?" she asked, her eyes warm and patient. There was no judgment in her tone, no hint that she thought this was too hard for him. She simply invited him to participate, to take control, to enjoy the music. Max blinked at her, uncertain. He had been hesitant to dance before, worried about making mistakes, about looking clumsy. The room could be loud, and other people could be unkind. But something in Emma's expression made him believe she genuinely wanted him to try. Slowly, he nodded. Emma smiled and took a step back, giving him space. "Go ahead, Max. I'll follow you," she said. And with that, she held out her hand. A silent promise that she would support him no matter what happened. For a moment, time seemed to slow. Max lifted his foot and tapped it to the rhythm of the music. His movements were careful, almost tentative at first, but Emma mirrored him patiently. She copied his steps exactly, matching his timing, his pace, his awkward little movements, making him feel confident rather than self-conscious. Each step he took was met with a soft clap or an encouraging word. "That's it. Perfect. You're doing amazing," she whispered, as if speaking directly to his heart. At that moment, across the diner, a man named Richard Lawson was observing. He wasn't supposed to notice. He was there for breakfast with his family, enjoying a rare morning away from boardrooms, phone calls, and endless meetings. But something about this scene caught his attention. He saw Emma not just helping a child, but creating a moment of pure joy. Richard had seen a lot of things in his life: wealth, power, and influence. But he hadn't seen kindness like this expressed so naturally. There was no motive, no desire for recognition. Only a genuine effort to make someone feel included and celebrated. Richard watched quietly as Emma continued to encourage Max. The boy's confidence grew with each step. Soon he was moving with a little more freedom, his face lighting up with smiles that reached his eyes. Emma laughed with him, clapped along, and cheered in a way that felt spontaneous, real, and unforced. Her joy was contagious, spreading across the small corner of the diner. Even other customers, who were initially engrossed in their own breakfasts, began to glance over, smiling at the sight. What struck Richard the most was the patience Emma showed. She didn't rush him. She didn't correct him harshly. She let him set the pace, take the lead, and make decisions for himself. She understood that Max's success wasn't about following strict steps or looking perfect. It was about giving him the freedom to express himself, to experience joy, and to feel capable. In a world that often judged children like Max for what they couldn't do, Emma was creating a space where he could simply be himself. Richard's mind wandered back to his own childhood, recalling moments when someone had shown him patience and encouragement, moments that had made a lasting difference. He realized how rare it was to witness such genuine kindness, especially in a busy public place where most people barely notice those around them. It made him pause, reflect, and feel something he hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet admiration for the simple yet profound impact one person could have on another's life. Meanwhile, Max's confidence soared. He laughed more freely now, a sound that was clear and bright. He spun a little, feeling the music in his own way, and Emma followed, her movements fluid and natural. She didn't care about mistakes. She cared about Max's happiness, and that made every misstep a moment to celebrate rather than correct. The diner, usually just a place for food and conversation, became a small stage where courage, joy, and human connection played out in real time. Other patrons couldn't help but notice. A woman at the next table whispered to her friend about how sweet it was to see Emma helping Max. A man in a business suit smiled quietly, realizing that there was more to life than his own worries and deadlines. Even the cook, peeking out from the kitchen, paused to watch the scene, a small smile on his face. Emma had created a ripple effect, and it all started with a simple act of patience and encouragement. After a few minutes, the song ended, and Max sat down, breathing a little heavily but glowing with pride. Emma leaned down again, placing a hand on his shoulder. "See? You did it. You led the dance like a pro," she said warmly. Max's eyes sparkled, and he nodded, his face lighting up with a smile that seemed to fill the entire corner of the diner. Richard, who had been quietly observing, found himself smiling too. He felt a warmth in his chest, a sense that he had witnessed something rare and beautiful. Before leaving the table, Richard reached into his wallet and left a generous tip. It was more than just money, it was a silent acknowledgement of what he had seen. He didn't approach Emma immediately. He didn't feel the need to. He simply watched as she moved on to serve other tables, continuing her work with the same care and attention she had shown Max. In that brief moment, Richard realized that some people carried a gift that couldn't be measured in wealth, power, or status. Emma had a gift of kindness, patience, and empathy, and he would remember it long after the coffee cooled and the plates were cleared. The rest of the morning continued in its usual rhythm. But for Max, for Emma, and for Richard, something had shifted. Max had discovered a little more confidence in himself. Emma had shared a moment of genuine connection that reminded her why she loved what she did, even when it was tiring or thankless. And Richard had been reminded that true influence and wealth were not just about what one possessed, but about the ability to see, appreciate, and encourage goodness in others. It was a simple scene in a busy diner, but its impact was profound. In the midst of ordinary life, a small act of patience and encouragement had created a moment of extraordinary meaning. Emma didn't know it yet. That day would mark the beginning of a change that would reach far beyond the walls of the diner, affecting lives in ways she couldn't yet imagine. And Richard, the billionaire who had seen it all, knew he had witnessed something unforgettable, a reminder of the human heart's capacity for kindness, connection, and joy. Sometimes a single act of kindness can spark a chain of events that changes not just one life, but the lives of countless others. The diner was alive with the usual morning hustle. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the scent of sizzling bacon and toasted bread. Plates clattered on the counters, chairs scraped lightly against the floor, and the chatter of customers created a familiar hum. Among all this, Emma moved with a natural rhythm. She wasn't just serving food. She was making sure everyone felt seen, heard, and cared for. She carried trays filled with eggs, toast, and coffee cups, balancing them expertly in one hand while greeting customers with a warm smile that seemed to lighten the room. There was something about the way she worked, a kind of grace in the ordinary tasks that made her presence noticeable without her even trying. At a corner table sat a young boy named Max, his legs swinging slightly under the chair. Max had cerebral palsy, and everyday movements, which many took for granted, were a challenge for him. He tried to sit up straight, to follow the beat of a song playing softly from the jukebox in the corner, but his movements were stiff, uneven, and sometimes awkward. Most people might not have noticed him at all, or if they did, they might have felt a brief pang of pity and then looked away. But Emma saw him. She noticed the tiny effort it took for him to tap his foot in rhythm, the way his fingers twitched in concentration, and the flicker of frustration in his eyes when he struggled. Emma didn't hesitate. She approached Max's table quietly, leaning down to his level so that she wasn't towering over him. Her voice was soft but clear, filled with encouragement. "Hey Max, do you want to try leading the dance?" she asked, her eyes warm and patient. There was no judgment in her tone, no hint that she thought this was too hard for him. She simply invited him to participate, to take control, to enjoy the music. Max blinked at her, uncertain. He had been hesitant to dance before, worried about making mistakes, about looking clumsy. The room could be loud and other people could be unkind. But something in Emma's expression made him believe she genuinely wanted him to try. Slowly, he nodded. Emma smiled and took a step back, giving him space. "Go ahead, Max. I'll follow you," she said. And with that, she held out her hand. Silent promise that she would support him no matter what happened. For a moment, time seemed to slow. Max lifted his foot and tapped it to the rhythm of the music. His movements were careful, almost tentative at first, but Emma mirrored him patiently. She copied his steps exactly, matching his timing, his pace, his awkward little movements, making him feel confident rather than self-conscious. Each step he took was met with a soft clap or an encouraging word. "That's it. Perfect. You're doing amazing," she whispered, as if speaking directly to his heart. At that moment, across the diner, a man named Richard Lawson was observing. He wasn't supposed to notice. He was there for breakfast with his family, enjoying a rare morning away from boardrooms, phone calls, and endless meetings. But something about this scene caught his attention. He saw Emma not just helping a child, but creating a moment of pure joy. Richard had seen a lot of things in his life: wealth, power, and influence. But he hadn't seen kindness like this expressed so naturally. There was no motive, no desire for recognition. Only a genuine effort to make someone feel included and celebrated. Richard watched quietly as Emma continued to encourage Max. The boy's confidence grew with each step. Soon, he was moving with a little more freedom, his face lighting up with smiles that reached his eyes. Emma laughed with him, clapped along, and cheered in a way that felt spontaneous, real, and unforced. Her joy was contagious, spreading across the small corner of the diner. Even other customers, who were initially engrossed in their own breakfasts, began to glance over, smiling at the sight. What struck Richard the most was the patience Emma showed. She didn't rush him. She didn't correct him harshly. She let him set the pace, take the lead, and make decisions for himself. She understood that Max's success wasn't about following strict steps or looking perfect. It was about giving him the freedom to express himself, to experience joy, and to feel capable. In a world that often judged children like Max for what they couldn't do, Emma was creating a space where he could simply be himself. Richard's mind wandered back to his own childhood, recalling moments when someone had shown him patience and encouragement, moments that had made a lasting difference. He realized how rare it was to witness such genuine kindness, especially in a busy public place where most people barely noticed those around them. It made him pause, reflect, and feel something he hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet admiration for the simple yet profound impact one person could have on another's life. Meanwhile, Max's confidence soared. He laughed more freely now, a sound that was clear and bright. He spun a little, feeling the music in his own way, and Emma followed, her movements fluid and natural. She didn't care about mistakes. She cared about Max's happiness, and that made every misstep a moment to celebrate rather than correct. The diner, usually just a place for food and conversation, had become a small stage where courage, joy, and human connection played out in real time. Other patrons couldn't help but notice. A woman at the next table whispered to her friend about how sweet it was to see Emma helping Max. A man in a business suit smiled quietly, realizing that there was more to life than his own worries and deadlines. Even the cook, peeking out from the kitchen, paused to watch the scene, a small smile on his face. Emma had created a ripple effect, and it all started with a simple act of patience and encouragement. After a few minutes, the song ended and Max sat down, breathing a little heavily, but glowing with pride. Emma leaned down again, placing a hand on his shoulder. "See, you did it. You led the dance like a pro," she said warmly. Max's eyes sparkled, and he nodded, his face lighting up with a smile that seemed to fill the entire corner of the diner. Richard, who had been quietly observing, found himself smiling too. He felt a warmth in his chest, a sense that he had witnessed something rare and beautiful. Before leaving the table, Richard reached into his wallet and left a generous tip. It was more than just money, it was a silent acknowledgement of what he had seen. He didn't approach Emma immediately. He didn't feel the need to. He simply watched as she moved on to serve other tables. Continuing her work with the same care and attention she had shown Max in that brief moment, Richard realized that some people carried a gift that couldn't be measured in wealth, power, or status. Emma had a gift of kindness, patience, and empathy, and he would remember it long after the coffee cooled and the plates were cleared. The rest of the morning continued in its usual rhythm. But for Max, for Emma, and for Richard, something had shifted. Max had discovered a little more confidence in himself. Emma had shared a moment of genuine connection that reminded her why she loved what she did, even when it was tiring or thankless. And Richard had been reminded that true influence and wealth were not just about what one possessed, but about the ability to see, appreciate, and encourage goodness in others. It was a simple scene in a busy diner, but its impact was profound. In the midst of ordinary life, a small act of patience and encouragement had created a moment of extraordinary meaning. Emma didn't know it yet, but that day would mark the beginning of a change that would reach far beyond the walls of the diner, affecting lives in ways she couldn't yet imagine. And Richard, the billionaire who had seen it all, knew he had witnessed something unforgettably, a reminder of the human heart's capacity for kindness, connection, and joy. The morning at the diner settled into a quiet rhythm. The clatter of plates and the hum of conversation continued. But Richard Lawson remained seated, unable to shake the image of Emma and Max from his mind. He sipped his coffee slowly, more absorbed in the scene he had just witnessed than in the breakfast before him. There was something about Emma that was different, something rare and remarkable. In a world full of ambition, schedules, and expectations, she had given attention and care without asking for anything in return. That simple act of kindness, the way she had let Max lead, left a lasting impression on him. Richard had spent decades building his empire. He had learned to recognize talent, ambition, and determination, and he had rewarded those qualities generously. But the qualities he admired in Emma were of a different kind. It was patience, empathy, and genuine warmth, traits that could not be quantified, but that had a profound effect on people. He realized that, in all his years of success, he had rarely paused to witness such a moment of pure human connection. He found himself reflecting on the difference between power and influence, between wealth and the ability to touch lives in ways money could never buy. Emma had influence in a way he had rarely seen, quiet, personal, and deeply impactful. As he continued to watch, he noticed small details that made the moment even more special. The way Emma adjusted her steps to match Max's movements perfectly, the gentle encouragement in her tone, the genuine joy on her face, it all spoke of someone who not only cared, but understood how to bring out the best in others. She had transformed what could have been a frustrating or embarrassing moment for Max into a memory he would treasure. Richard's mind drifted to his own children. He remembered the challenges he faced as a parent, the desire to nurture confidence and self-esteem in them, and he realized that Emma had done, in a few minutes, what many parents struggled to do for years. The interaction between Emma and Max sparked something in Richard. He began to see beyond the surface of the diner, beyond the plates of food and the everyday business of serving customers. He saw Emma's character, her values, and her strength. It was not something that could be observed in a boardroom or through a resume. It was revealed through action, in the quiet, unnoticed moments where someone chose to act with compassion rather than convenience. Richard realized that these were the moments that truly defined a person, and he was fascinated by the way Emma had embodied them so effortlessly. Richard also noticed the subtle effects Emma had on others around her. Customers who were previously absorbed in their own routines now looked up and smiled. A young mother glanced over, her expression softening as she watched Emma laugh with Max. Even the other staff in the diner seemed to respond to the positive energy she radiated. There was a ripple effect, small but powerful, spreading from one act of kindness to touch the lives of many. Richard was struck by how natural it all seemed, as if Emma had no awareness of the impact she had on everyone around her. This humility, combined with her ability to make someone feel seen and valued, made her presence even more remarkable. As the breakfast crowd thinned, Richard found himself unable to leave immediately. He wanted to understand more about the woman who had captivated his attention. He observed Emma as she moved gracefully between tables, balancing trays and taking orders with the same warmth and attentiveness she had shown to Max. He noticed the way she spoke to the elderly man in the corner, how she remembered his usual order without being prompted. He saw how she treated the kitchen staff with respect, acknowledging their efforts with a simple thank you or a nod of appreciation. Everything about her behavior spoke of someone who cared deeply, not just about her job, but about the people she encountered every day. Richard reflected on how rare it was to find someone like Emma in the world he inhabited. In his life, people often acted out of self-interest, motivated by ambition, recognition, or reward. Genuine kindness was uncommon, and humility even more so. But here was a young woman working a demanding job, yet giving herself fully to each moment, making a difference in small, meaningful ways. He realized that her actions were not limited to Max. They were part of her character, a reflection of who she was at her core. The thought lingered in his mind as he finished his breakfast. He had seen many people in his life, evaluated their potential, judged their abilities, and made decisions based on skill and ambition. But Emma was different. Her potential was not measured by her resume or accomplishments, but by the way she affected the people around her. He understood that this kind of impact was rare and precious, and he felt a deep desire to support and encourage someone like her. The world needed more people who could inspire confidence, kindness, and joy. And Richard knew that he had the resources to make a difference in her life as he left the diner. Richard felt a quiet determination forming in his mind. He would find a way to meet Emma again, to understand her story, and perhaps even offer a chance to help her pursue her passions. He did not act impulsively. He was patient and thoughtful, knowing that a meaningful connection could not be forced. But he felt certain that their paths had crossed for a reason, and he was willing to take the time to see where that connection might lead. Meanwhile, Emma continued her work, unaware of the deep impression she had made. She focused on her customers, on delivering each order with care and attention. She did not seek recognition for her actions with Max. It was simply part of who she was. She had grown up understanding the importance of empathy and patience, values instilled in her by her parents and shaped by her own experiences. For her, helping Max and other children like him was not extraordinary, it was simply the right thing to do. But as she moved through the diner, there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The people she had interacted with seemed lighter, more cheerful, and more willing to smile. Emma noticed some of the reactions, but she didn't dwell on them. She was focused on her work, yet unconsciously, she was leaving a mark on the lives of those around her. Her kindness and attentiveness created an environment that felt welcoming, warm and safer, rare quality in a busy, ordinary diner. Richard's encounter with Emma stayed with him long after he left. He found himself thinking about the small, significant ways people could impact one another's lives. He considered the choices he had made, the opportunities he had given to others, and the ways he could use his position to foster kindness and support. Seeing Emma's genuine care for Max reminded him that true success was not measured solely in wealth or accomplishments, but in the ability to uplift and inspire others. Over the next few days, Richard could not stop thinking about that moment in the diner. He recalled the joy on Max's face, the patience in Emma's actions, and the natural warmth she radiated. It became clear to him that he wanted to learn more about her. It's not for personal gain, but because he recognized a rare and valuable quality. He understood that connecting with someone like Emma was not just an opportunity, it was a responsibility. If he had the means to help someone with such potential and heart, He owed it to her and to the world to do so. In those quiet moments of reflection, Richard realized that life often presented people with unexpected lessons. He had learned about business, strategy, and leadership, but he had rarely encountered a lesson about the power of empathy and kindness delivered so clearly and simply. Emma had reminded him of the importance of seeing people for who they truly are, beyond appearances, titles, or social status. She had shown him that a small act of encouragement could change a life in ways that were profound and lasting. The diner, with its ordinary tables, bustling kitchen, and familiar sounds, had become a place of revelation. For Richard, it was a reminder that extraordinary things could happen in the most ordinary settings. For Emma, it was a continuation of her daily routine, yet one that unknowingly had a ripple effect far beyond what she could see. And for Max, it was a moment of confidence and joy, one that would stay with him as a reminder of what it felt like to be celebrated and encouraged. Richard's admiration for Emma grew with each memory of that morning. He recognized that her qualities were rare, and he felt a growing sense of responsibility to support someone who had the ability to make such a positive difference in the world. He understood that life sometimes required patience and observation before action, and he was willing to wait for the right moment to connect with her. The impression she had left on him was not fleeting. It was a quiet but powerful realization that her character, her empathy, and her dedication deserved recognition and encouragement. The memory of Emma's gentle encouragement lingered with him throughout the day. He replayed the moment in his mind, the way she had mirrored Max's movements, the way she had laughed with him, the careful balance of patience and warmth that made him feel seen. Richard understood that such moments could define a person's life, giving them confidence, joy, and a sense of belonging. He knew that he wanted to be part of supporting that kind of growth, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. As the days passed, Richard reflected further on the power of small acts of kindness. He realized that the world often overlooked the importance of empathy and patience, that these qualities could create lasting impact. Emma's example reminded him that true influence was not always visible on a balance sheet or in a business deal, was found in the quiet, meaningful moments that touched hearts and inspired change. Richard couldn't stop thinking about Emma, even as he went about his busy life. With meetings, calls, and decisions that often shaped entire companies, his mind kept returning to that quiet corner of the diner. There was something about her that felt rare, something genuine and unforced. Most people in his world acted with purpose, ambition, or self-interest. But Emma had acted simply because it was right, because she cared. That kind of authenticity was hard to find, and it left a lasting impression on him. A week passed, and Richard decided to return to the diner. He told himself it was a casual visit, just another breakfast, but in truth, he wanted to see her again, to understand more about the woman who had moved him so deeply. The diner was busy as usual. The smell of coffee and pancakes filled the air, and the chatter of morning conversations created a comforting hum. Emma moved through it all with her usual energy, balancing trays, taking orders, and offering smiles to every customer. She seemed completely absorbed in her work, unaware that she had left a mark on someone who could change the course of her life. Richard found a seat where he could observe without being intrusive. He watched Emma interact with the customers around her. There was a young mother with a toddler, and Emma patiently took the time to calm the child when he got restless. She spoke to an elderly couple, remembering their usual breakfast choices, without being prompted. Every interaction seemed effortless, yet every gesture carried thoughtfulness and care. Richard realized that Emma's kindness was not limited to Max or a single act. It was part of who she was, something consistent in every moment. Eventually, he gathered the courage to approach her. He waited until she was momentarily free, her hands wiping down a table after a customer had left. "Excuse me," he said gently. Emma looked up, slightly startled, but polite. "Hi," she responded with a cautious smile, curious but unsure who this man was. "I wanted to thank you for the other day," Richard said. "The way you encouraged that young boy. It was remarkable. I just wanted to tell you that." Emma's eyes widened slightly. She had not expected any recognition, and certainly not from someone she didn't know. "Oh," "It was nothing," she replied quickly, waving her hand as if to brush it off. But Richard shook his head. "No, it was something," he said firmly, but kindly. "You didn't just help him. You made him feel confident, capable, and happy. That's rare. I wanted to meet you and learn more about you." Emma felt a mix of surprise and curiosity. Rarely did anyone notice the effort she put into her work, especially in such a genuine, thoughtful way. She nodded slowly, unsure how to respond, but intrigued by his sincerity, they sat down at a small table near the window. And Richard began to ask questions, not about her job performance or credentials, but about her life, her passions, and her dreams. Emma hesitated at first, speaking carefully, but Richard's tone was patient and encouraging. She talked about her family, her love for helping children, and her dream of opening a dance studio for kids with disabilities. She had always been passionate about dance, and over the years, she'd volunteered at community centers and schools, teaching small groups whenever she could. But financial struggles had forced her to put her own dreams aside while she focused on making ends meet as a waitress. Richard listened intently, fascinated by her story. He asked questions, not to judge, but to understand. He wanted to know what had inspired her to help children, what challenges she had faced, and what motivated her to keep going despite the difficulties. Emma spoke honestly, her voice carrying both pride and frustration. She admitted that there were moments she had doubted herself, moments when she felt trapped by circumstances, yet she continued because of the joy she saw in the children she taught. Richard could see her resilience, her determination, and her genuine compassion. He realized that these qualities were not something that could be taught or bad. They were part of her character. He was struck by the contrast between the struggles she faced and the positive impact she was already making. In a world where success was often measured by wealth and status, Emma's success was measured in smiles, confidence, and the joy she instilled in others. It was quiet, unseen by most, but profound in its effect. As they talked, Richard found himself reflecting on the ways he could help her. He had resources, connections, and opportunities that could make a significant difference in her life, but he also knew he needed to approach it carefully. He wanted to ensure that any offer he made would support her dreams without taking away her independence or her sense of accomplishment. He admired her too much to treat her as someone who needed charity. She deserved partnership, guidance, and opportunity. Emma, for her part, began to relax as she realized Richard's genuine interest. He wasn't there to lecture her, judge her, or offer empty praise. He was listening, engaging, and asking questions that showed he valued her experience and perspective. It was rare for someone from outside her world to take such interest in her story, and it made her feel both seen and respected. She began to speak more freely, sharing anecdotes about the children she had worked with, the small victories that gave her hope, the challenges she had faced in trying to make a difference. Richard responded with thoughtful questions, sometimes prompting her to think about solutions or possibilities she had not considered. He asked about her long-term goals, what resources she might need, and how she envisioned her dance studio. Emma had dreamed of creating a space where children of all abilities could learn, grow, and feel confident, but she had always assumed it was beyond her reach. Now, with Richard listening and offering insight, her dreams began to feel tangible, almost achievable. The conversation flowed naturally. With no sense of pressure or expectation, Richard was careful to respect Emma's pace, allowing her to express herself fully. He could see the spark of excitement in her eyes when she described her ideas, the way her hands gestured as she painted a picture of the studio in her mind. He realized that this passion was not fleeting, it was a part of her identity, a force that had guided her choices and defined her character at one point. Richard leaned back, studying her with a mixture of admiration and contemplation. He understood that opportunities were only valuable if they aligned with a person's goals and values. Emma's dedication, empathy, and creativity were rare, and he wanted to find a way to help her achieve her dreams without diminishing the effort she had already invested. He saw that she had already made a difference in countless small ways, and with the right support, she could reach even greater heights. As the morning turned into early afternoon, Their conversation drew to a close. Emma felt a mixture of gratitude, surprise, and cautious optimism. She had shared personal details of her life with someone she had just met. Yet Richard's respect and genuine interest made it feel natural and safe. She realized that this meeting, which had started as a casual breakfast, might be the beginning of something that could change the course of her life. Richard left the diner that day with a sense of purpose. He had learned about Emma's world, her struggles, and her dreams, and he felt a responsibility to support her in a meaningful way. He recognized that she had already made a significant impact on those around her, and with guidance, resources, and opportunity, she could do even more. The encounter had reinforced his belief in the importance of empathy, kindness, and the quiet power of human connection. For Emma, the week following the meeting was filled with reflection. She thought about the conversation, the way Richard had listened, and the possibility of someone believing in her dreams. It was unusual for someone from such a different world to show genuine interest in her story, and it gave her hope she had not felt in years. She began to consider what it might mean to pursue her dreams seriously, to take steps she had postponed due to financial and practical constraints. Both of them carried the memory of that meeting forward, though in different ways. For Richard, it was a reminder of the profound impact one person could have on another when attention, empathy, and encouragement were combined. For Emma, it was the first hint that her passion and dedication could be recognized and supported in ways she had never imagined. The connection they had formed, brief but meaningful, set the stage for the transformation that was yet to come in those quiet moments. Both Richard and Emma understood something important. Life had a way of connecting people at the right time. Chance encounters, small acts of kindness, and genuine interest could lead to opportunities and changes that neither could have predicted. The diner had been the setting for a simple, ordinary event. Yet it had created a turning point, a meeting of hearts and minds that would influence both of their lives in ways neither had fully realized. Richard's admiration for Emma continued to grow. He knew that her passion, integrity, and empathy were rare qualities, ones that deserved encouragement and support. He began to consider concrete ways he could help her achieve her goals, ways that would allow her to maintain her independence while expanding her impact. Emma, meanwhile, felt a renewed sense of possibility. She realized that her dedication to helping children and pursuing her dreams had not gone. Richard could not get Emma out of his mind after their conversation at the diner. He had spent the week thinking about her story, her passion for dance, and the way she had devoted herself to helping children with disabilities. The more he reflected, the more he realized that she was someone truly exceptional. Unlike the people he met in the business world, whose goals were often driven by money or ambition, Emma's motivations were pure. She wanted to make a real difference in the lives of others. That kind of dedication was rare. He felt a growing desire to help her in a meaningful way. He carefully considered how to approach her. He did not want to overwhelm her with an offer that felt like charity. He wanted it to be an opportunity that respected her independence, honored her hard work, and gave her the resources to pursue her dream fully. Richard decided to reach out in a way that was personal but deliberate, inviting her to meet again at a quiet cafe, where they could talk without the noise and distractions of the diner. He wanted this to be a thoughtful conversation, not a rushed decision. Emma was surprised when Richard contacted her. She did not expect that someone who had observed her kindness with Max would reach out again, and she felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Meeting him again, she wondered what his intentions might be, but she also recognized the opportunity. When she arrived at the cafe, she was greeted warmly by Richard, who thanked her again for taking the time to meet him. They sat down, and for a while they talked about everyday things, her work at the diner, the challenges of balancing multiple responsibilities, and her love for dance. Richard listened carefully as Emma spoke, and then he gently shifted the conversation toward her dream. "I want to help you pursue your dance studio," he said quietly. Emma blinked in surprise, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "Me? But I couldn't. I don't know how that could even be possible," she stammered. Richard smiled reassuringly. "I've seen what you do, Emma. The passion you have, the way you make children feel confident and happy, it's remarkable. I want to help you create a place where you can do this full time." where more children can benefit from your skills and dedication. Emma felt a mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to say no, to insist that she could manage on her own, to keep her independence intact. But another part of her felt hope, a sense that this was a chance she had never dared to imagine. She had dreamed of opening a dance studio for years, but financial struggles and daily responsibilities had always held her back. Richard's offer was not just financial support, it was validation. Recognition of her talent and her heart. As they continued to talk, Richard explained how he could help. He would provide funding for the studio, assist with finding a suitable location, and connect her with people who could help with marketing, legal matters, and operations. But he also emphasized that the studio would be Emma's to run, her vision to lead. He wanted her to maintain control over the creative and personal aspects, ensuring that the space reflected her values and her approach to teaching. Emma listened, feeling a mixture of disbelief and cautious excitement. This was real, but it was also overwhelming. They spent hours discussing the details. Richard asked about her vision for the studio, how many children she wanted to teach, what kind of programs she envisioned, and what resources she would need. Emma described a place where children of all abilities could learn dance in a supportive, encouraging environment. She talked about creating classes tailored to each child's needs, using music and movement to build confidence and joy. She imagined partnerships with local schools and community centers to reach children who might not otherwise have access to such programs. Richard was deeply impressed. He asked thoughtful questions, helping her think through practical concerns without imposing his own ideas. He wanted to empower her, not take over. He suggested ways to reach families who might benefit from the classes, methods for structuring lessons, and ideas for creating a welcoming and safe environment. Emma realized that his experience, connections, and insight could help turn her vision into reality much faster than she had ever imagined. As the conversation progressed, Emma began to feel more confident. She realized that this opportunity was not about charity or luck. It was about collaboration and belief in her abilities. Richard believed in her, and that belief gave her courage. She could see the possibility of turning her passion into something sustainable. A place where her talents could make a lasting impact. The dream that had always felt distant now seemed achievable, and the excitement was tangible in her voice and her gestures. Richard also asked Emma about the children she had worked with and the small victories she had seen. She shared stories about Max and others, moments when a child had overcome fear or hesitation to take a step, spin, or dance move. She spoke about the smiles, the laughter, and the pride she had witnessed. Richard listened intently, realizing that the impact she had already made was significant. He understood that the studio would not just be a business, it would be a place where children could grow, learn, and feel valued. After several hours of discussion, they reached a plan. Richard would provide the initial funding and connections, but Emma would lead the project. She would select the location, design the classes, hire instructors if needed, and oversee the day-to-day operations. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Emma left the cafe feeling exhilarated and hopeful. For the first time in years, she could see a path forward for her dream, and it felt real. Over the next few weeks, Emma threw herself into planning. She scouted locations, consulted with local contractors, and began outlining the structure of the classes. Richard checked in occasionally, offering advice when asked, but always respecting her decisions. Emma discovered that the combination of her passion and Richard's support created momentum she had never experienced before. The energy of possibility energized her. She worked with a renewed sense of purpose. At the same time, Emma remained committed to the children she had been teaching. She continued volunteering at community centers and schools, applying new ideas she had developed while planning the studio. She realized that the opportunity Richard had provided was not just about financial support, it was about amplifying the impact she had already been making. Each child she taught, each small success, now felt like a step toward something bigger. Richard, meanwhile, observed from a distance, quietly admiring Emma's determination. He had seen many ambitious people in his life, but few combined talent, heart, and resilience as she did. He knew that the support he was providing would make a difference. But he also recognized that it was Emma's dedication and vision that would truly bring the project to life. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that he could play a role in helping her achieve her dreams. As the opening day of the studio approached, Emma faced the usual challenges of any new venture: permits, renovations, equipment, and staffing, but she approached each obstacle with confidence and creativity. She had learned to trust her instincts and to rely on her experience working with children. Every challenge became an opportunity to refine her vision and to ensure that the studio would reflect her values of inclusion, patience, and joy. Finally, the studio was ready. The space was bright, welcoming, and full of energy. Mirrors lined the walls, colorful mats covered the floors, and music filled the air. Emma walked through the rooms, imagining the children who would soon enter, feeling their excitement and seeing their confidence grow. She thought about Max and the other children she had taught, and she realized that this was not just a business, it was a place where lives would be changed. On opening day, children arrived with their parents, curious and excited. Emma greeted each family warmly, introducing them to the space and explaining the programs. She guided the children through simple exercises, encouraging them to explore movement and express themselves freely. Laughter and music filled the studio, creating an atmosphere of joy and accomplishment. For Emma, it was a dream realized, a culmination of years of dedication, and a beginning of something even greater. Richard visited quietly, observing from a corner, smiling as he watched Emma lead the first class. He saw the confidence she instilled in the children, the patience she showed in guiding each movement, and the genuine joy on their faces. He realized that his decision to support her had been the right one, but he also understood that it was Emma's talent, heart, and determination that had created this transformation. The studio was not just a place, it was a reflection of her spirit, her dedication, and her vision. As the day ended, Emma took a moment to reflect. She had never imagined that a simple act of encouragement at a diner could lead to this. Her dream was no longer just a vision. It was real, tangible, and impacting lives every day. She felt gratitude not only for Richard's support, but for the journey that had brought her to this point. Each challenge, each small victory, and each moment of patience had led her here. And the sense of fulfillment was overwhelming. The studio became a success, not because of its funding or location, but because of the care, dedication, and empathy Emma brought to every lesson. Children flourished under her guidance, building confidence, learning new skills, and discovering the joy of movement. Parents were grateful for the supportive. The opening of Emma's dance studio had been a success, but the days that followed were even more remarkable. Word quickly spread through the community about the inclusive space she had created, and soon, children from all backgrounds began arriving, eager to learn and explore movement in a safe, supportive environment. Emma found herself guiding not just children with disabilities, but all children, helping each one discover confidence, rhythm, and joy in their own way. Her vision was coming alive before her eyes, and each smile, each laugh, each small achievement reminded her why she had dedicated herself to this work. Every morning, Emma arrived early to prepare the studio. She arranged the mats, set up the music, and reviewed lesson plans, ensuring everything was ready for the children. She was meticulous, but it was more than organization, it was care. She wanted every child to feel welcome and valued the moment they walked through the door. Parents often stayed to watch the lessons, observing how Emma interacted with the children. Her patience, encouragement, and genuine excitement for each child's progress left a lasting impression. Some parents even admitted that they had never seen their children so happy or confident in a new activity before. One afternoon, Max walked into the studio with his mother. He had grown taller and stronger since Emma had first met him at the diner, but his movements were still cautious, and his confidence sometimes wavered. Emma greeted him warmly, crouching down to his level and offering a high five. "I'm so glad you're here, Max. Are you ready to dance today?" Max nodded eagerly, a bright smile on his face. As the music started, he took a deep breath and began to move, Emma following his lead and adjusting to his pace. The room seemed to glow with joy, filled with the sound of laughter, music, and clapping. Emma watched him gain confidence with each step, and for a moment, she felt the same pride and wonder she had felt the first time she had danced. With him in the diner, Richard visited the studio occasionally. Though he never wanted to overshadow Emma's work, he would observe quietly from the back of the room, taking in the atmosphere. What struck him most was not the polished facility or the well-organized programs, but the energy Emma created. The children's joy, the parents' trust, and the supportive environment were all reflections of her dedication and vision. He realized that while his resources had provided the means to start the studio, it was Emma's heart and talent that had turned it into a place of transformation. One day, Richard asked if he could speak with Emma privately after a lesson. She agreed, curious about what he might say. Once the children had left and the studio was quiet, he approached her with a smile. "Emma," he began, "I've watched what you've built here, and I am more impressed than I ever imagined. You didn't just create a studio, you've created a space where children can grow, express themselves, and feel confident in ways that will stay with them forever." Emma felt a blush of pride, but quickly shook her head. "It's not just me. The children inspire me every day. Without them, there wouldn't be this energy or joy. I'm just guiding it." Richard nodded, understanding her humility, but he insisted. "It takes someone extraordinary to guide it the way you do. You've changed lives, Emma, and I think the best is still ahead." With Richard's encouragement and continued support, Emma began expanding her programs. She introduced new classes for different age groups, adaptive dance programs for children with varying abilities, and even workshops for parents to learn how to encourage and support their children through movement. The community's response was overwhelmingly positive. Families expressed gratitude not just for the instruction but for the nurturing, inclusive environment that Emma had created. Some children who had been shy or withdrawn began showing confidence they had never displayed before. Parents would often share stories of children who returned home from class smiling, excited, and proud of what they had accomplished. Emma also started collaborating with schools and local organizations. She visited classrooms to give demonstrations, taught short programs at community centers, and trained volunteers to assist with adaptive classes. Her impact extended far beyond the walls of her studio, touching the lives of children who might not have had access to such opportunities otherwise. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced her belief in the importance of her work and the power of encouragement, patience, and care. One afternoon, a young girl named Lily arrived at the studio for her first class. She had limited mobility due to a physical disability and was initially hesitant to participate. Emma knelt beside her, offering gentle encouragement. "Lily, it's okay to move however you can. You can lead, and I'll follow you. Just have fun." With Emma's patient guidance, Lily began to explore the music and movement. Slowly, a smile spread across her face as she took small steps and arm movements, finding rhythm and joy in her own way. By the end of the class, she was laughing, proud of what she had accomplished and eager to return. Emma watched, her heart swelling with the same pride she had felt with Max. Knowing that these small victories were monumental for the children and their families, Richard continued to witness these moments, often silently observing the interactions between Emma and the children. He was amazed by her ability to connect with each child individually, understanding their strengths, challenges, and fears, and tailoring her encouragement to fit their needs. It became clear to him that the real success of the studio was not in its physical space or programs, but in Emma's presence, guidance, and empathy. The children were learning not only dance, but confidence, self-expression, and the joy of accomplishment. Lessons that would stay with them for life. Emma's life also changed in ways she had never imagined. With the success of the studio, she could finally support herself fully while pursuing her passion. She no longer worried about financial struggles or working long, exhausting hours at the diner. She found fulfillment in the work she loved. The gratitude she received from families and children reinforced her purpose. She became a mentor and inspiration to other instructors, teaching them not only dance techniques, but also the importance of patience, encouragement, and genuine care. Months passed, and the studio continued to thrive. Emma received letters and messages from parents, sharing stories of children who had blossomed under her guidance. One parent wrote about how their shy child had become confident enough to perform in a school recital. Another described how a child who had never smiled in public now looked forward to every class. These stories were a testament to the power of her work, the impact of her guidance, and the importance of creating spaces where children could thrive. One day, Emma received a surprise visit from Max and his mother. Max had been attending the studio regularly, and his progress was remarkable. He approached Emma with a wide smile and said, "Look, I can do this now." He performed a small dance routine he had been practicing, moving with confidence and joy. Emma clapped and cheered, tears of pride welling in her eyes. Max's mother thanked Emma repeatedly, sharing how much the studio had changed Max's confidence, self-esteem, and overall happiness. Moments like this reminded Emma why she had started this journey and reinforced her commitment to continue making a difference as the years went by. The studio became a central part of the community. Children and families looked forward to the classes, and Emma became a well-respected figure in the world of adaptive dance. Her work inspired others to create inclusive programs, volunteer, and support children with disabilities. The impact of her dedication reached far beyond the studio walls. Spreading through the lives of every child she taught and every family she touched, Richard remained a quiet supporter, attending special events, offering advice when asked, and celebrating the successes of the studio. He felt immense pride in what Emma had accomplished, but more than that, he felt gratitude for having witnessed her talent and heart from the very beginning. Her journey had reminded him of the power of kindness, patience, and encouragement, and it had shown him that supporting others in pursuing their dreams could create profound and lasting change. Emma often reflected on the unlikely path that had led her here. She remembered the first day she had danced with Max in the diner, encouragement she had offered, and the unexpected attention of a man she barely knew. That single act of kindness and patience had set off a chain of events that changed her life and the lives of countless children. She realized that even the smallest gestures, smiles, encouragement, or willingness to let someone take the lead could have far-reaching consequences. The story of the studio became an inspiration to others. It was a reminder that ordinary people, through simple acts of kindness and dedication, could create extraordinary change. Emma's life, once constrained by financial worries and daily struggles, had been transformed by a combination of her own persistence, her compassion, and the belief someone else had in her. She had turned her dream into reality, creating a space where children could thrive, express themselves, and grow into confident, joyful individuals. Years later, Emma looked around the studio. Watching a new group of children take their first steps on the dance floor, she smiled, recognizing familiar patterns of hesitation, excitement, and triumph. She saw confidence blossoming, laughter spreading, and small victories celebrated. Her heart swelled with